You've seen the view, heard all the real talk. Now have a seat at our table. A table for five. So ladies, I'm happy that you're all here. We have a guest, Mercy. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, because we're going to get started to start talking about education. Ooh. And I know that that's your expertise and your passion.
Yes. My name is Mercy Ising, and I've been a teacher for 19 years, primarily with kindergarten through 8th grade. Wow. And my passion is teaching. That's what I've been put on this earth to do.
And what are you teaching right now? Like, what did you teach before, and what are you teaching now?
I taught elementary education for 15 years, and primarily 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and now I'm teaching middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
And you're teaching.
I'm teaching it for an online school now, so it's an independent study school versus being in a public school setting.
And how do you like that?
I love it. I think there's a lot of advantages to it for students and for parents, and for just being more, for parents to just really be more involved in their children's education.
Have you ever done private school education too?
No, but both of my kids are in private education, so I feel like I've dabbled in all three of the worlds of homeschooling, public education, and also private education as well. Yeah, I also homeschooled my daughter.
I was going to say, you did that too. Yeah. So why did you put her back in school, brick and mortar?
You know, I really believe that education is seasonal, and there are times like my daughter needed confidence built up in her, and she just all of a sudden got all of her confidence stripped. She's very smart, but just really felt like she was stupid. And started calling herself names and didn't feel good about herself as a student.
I'm sorry, excuse me, stripped at what point in her educational career?
At the beginning of 3rd grade, and
in the
classroom setting, and she just she lost confidence in herself, and I don't know, I don't like to blame it on the teacher because I'm a teacher, but I do believe it was a little bit from there, and maybe peer pressure from other kids. And she's very, very smart, and I consider her brilliant. We've had her tested because we thought she had ADHD. Maybe that was an issue. We went and had her tested, and it was actually she's off the charts as far as her IQ. But what happened was the teacher just didn't see her giftings, and so she needed to be at home with me for a while.
And was she in public school at this time?
She was at a private school.
She was at private school.
Yeah, and just a stellar academic program at their school. But we really, my husband and I really felt like we needed to be in charge of education. And so we spent a year. It really wasn't even about academics, even though it was there. She learned a lot, but it was really about building confidence in her as a student, as a human, and realizing I have giftings, and I'm just as good as everybody else around me. And so we took that year, and it was a season, and now she's back at the private school she's at, and so she's doing fabulous.
At the same private school.
At the same school.
Right. Wait a minute, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, because getting back to that, I think that every child is different, and not every school is a good fit for every child. And depending on where the child is in their educational career, where they are emotionally and maybe even physically.
Right. But this is what I find interesting. You could have, well, you did. You homeschooled her and you took care of that. But people or parents or families who can't do that, how do you find that fix for them? Like, what do you do to make that go away fix it, knowing they still have to stay in a brick and mortar environment?
Right. And I had to be in a brick and mortar environment. And what I think was so great about my mom and dad is they worked. Both my parents had 3 jobs each, and all we could afford was public school. So we had no choice like we have now. We've got the homeschooling option, we have private education, and public education. And I mean, there's so many different, you could even hire a private tutor to come home and teach your child all day long now. With all the if you have the money, And
not so much.
But not everybody can do that, but you have more options than when we did.
Right.
And so all 4 of my 3 sisters and I, we all did public education. And what I suggest to parents, what my parents did was, if there was lacking at school, it came at home. I'd come home from school, and we were, fresh off the boat from India. So we didn't have money. We didn't have money to buy.
Fobs.
Yeah,
we were fobs.
We really. And
meet another fob.
Nice to meet you. I totally get it, right?
Mercy, wow.
Yeah, so we didn't have money to buy chalk. Honestly, my dad would take the white gravel in our garden, and he'd write math problems all over the ground on the driveway.
Oh, wow.
And so when I came home from school, I thought we were playing games with Daddy, but we were actually learning more. And that's what I suggest to parents, is you have to be involved. So if you have a child who's losing confidence in themselves, like my daughter did. You have to get involved the way you
Step
can.
up.
Yep.
And for me, I was able to stay at home because I was teaching from home, so I was able to do that with her as well. But I know a lot of parents, they can't do it. So you have to be involved, get yourself in the classroom, you know, join that PTA or the parent-teacher fellowship.
Don't we all know about that?
That's so hard, though. I feel like that's a really huge task to ask of parents who are really working, or if you have a one, you know, parent household.
So you expect
How
the
do you-
school to
No,
step
I
up
don't
and
think.
take
I don't
care of
think
it?
I don't think you have your expectations putting it all on the school, but there has to be something else. Like my question was going to be really quick to you. Did you consider doing public school because she was at the private school, she was having issues, and then you decided to homeschool? Did you look at your local public school
Well,
at
we-
all to say maybe this is an option? Because
We
say
started
if it was
at
a regular
public school,
person,
and that's what got us into private
So
school.
then- so you went
because
from public
I was
to private,
I was a
and then
public
public
school
and then
kid
went
from
back.
kindergarten all the way through high school, and you know got into UCLA from public school, and so that's what I wanted for my kids. Because I wanted them to be an example in the public school setting of what we're teaching them at home, our
so
value
what
system.
pulled you away from the public school going into private?
And I don't use the word bully lightly at all. My daughter was in a bully situation in kindergarten. And the school didn't know how to handle it because of the school that we went to. It was primarily one ethnicity. And there was my little Indian daughter and two other kids that weren't of that ethnicity. And this little boy first day
Racism
decided
in America.
faith
Stick
is
around.
the, yeah, it is, yeah.
Coming out to say about it.
You know, it's,
But I think that's the answer to like, why do a lot of people leave the public school systems? People give me, you know, issues all the time. Why are you sending your kids to private school? You should just use the public school system. You live in a good area. You're paying taxes. You're wasting your money. Blah blah blah. But you have to look at your school and how they deal with certain situations, and is your child going to fit okay in that school? And sometimes you might not. So you have to be able to see what your alternatives are.
Yeah, and the reason why my husband and I chose, my kids happened to go to a faith-based private school, a Christian school, and we didn't even choose it because it's Christian. The reason why, and it's not even because of the great academics, I feel like they could get that at the public school where we're at. We live in a great area and have great public schools. The reason why our kids are there is because when I drop my kids off, I feel peace. And I know they're safe. And that's for me is the most important thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not bullying. It's not just the bullying. It's also the quality of the teachers and how they're going to treat my kids with respect. And knowing that I could drop my kids off at 8:20 and I'm at work and teaching other people's kids, which is really hard because there's a guilt associated with that for me. Because I feel like I'm teaching other people's kids while somebody else is teaching my kids. So there's that guilt when you're a teacher. But I know my kids are safe. There's not the issues that we see in some of the public, as far as the abuse, whether it's verbal or other things that we've seen in the news. I know that's not happening where my kids are, and that's the most important thing to me. And I feel like as parents, my husband's and my job is we teach the morals, and we take care of the extra academic stuff at home. We need to, when we get home, my husband works till 8, 9 o'clock at night. He leaves at 4:30 in the morning. But you know what? He is somehow involved in their education every single day.
So do you find that a lot of the schools should have more creative learning? What is it that your daughter do, H? And they group them together.
How they
so
teach
that,
at the
how
school
they teach,
that-
right? The
Are
group,
there like learner groups?
like
you're asking?
right. Do
yeah,
you find
yeah.
that a lot of schools don't supply the like learning?
I think it's so diverse. You know, what another issue is that we have great curriculums in schools, but we need teachers to implement it. So you might have a great.
But I feel like we might have great teachers in schools and great curriculum, but we need like learning, because for myself, I went back to school when I was 100, and and I was in school with kids that were just fresh out of high school, and I went to public school my whole life. So, and most of the kids that I went to school, because I went to a private college, Pepperdine. So I just had to tell you that. So most of those kids came from private school, but
Right.
me, I came from public school. So when I was in class, the professor was talking and I'm looking like, what the hell is he talking about? But a lot of them got it because they already experienced it, whether it was in high school or even in elementary school. But they already got most of the learning, so that's where the challenge was. But I feel like if you have like learning, the kids will do better because they with people that learn like them, opposed to just being in a group of people and they like trying to figure it out, and then you do lose confidence. You're like, what the hell is going on here?
So Marguerite, what do you mean by like learning? Do you mean by the different modalities of learning, or do you mean as far as like where they are academically?
Where they are academically. I feel like sometimes we have two brains, left and right. I'm a right brain. I'm a right brain to the 10th power. But some people are left brain, so they more literal. I'm more artsy. Absolutely. I'm more creative. I'm that brain. So if you give me something that you teaching me and I got to draw it, I can probably do it in a matter of minutes. Whereas though if you give a left brain that, they like, what are you doing? What? Right. So that's what I mean when I say like learning. And I feel like sometimes teachers are not necessarily picking up on the kids that need extra special creative ways to
I don't think
get
our
it.
school system is prepared
Exactly.
for that.
I was
We're
just gonna say,
overwhelmed with
there's-
too many students in
Yeah.
public schools especially. You find that, in most private schools they can get away with that. But public schools, there's no way. You can't take 30 kids and decide, I'm going to
But
group.
even in some private schools, they don't have it because some private schools are more about academics
Or
and
teaching
just,
to the test.
right.
They
They
don't got tests
trying to get their
schools.
kids to
It's
Harvard.
not
They trying to get their kids to Harvard, so they're not concerned about whether this kid want to go to dance at Juilliard or something. They want you to get to Harvard. Their parents are paying for this education.
I think sometimes
and people fall short because of that. Because although their parent can pay for it, it's still not what they need. So
Well, I think it's a parent's job to figure it out that your kids like, fit it into more academic or artsy. You have to figure it out, and then you have to pick and choose that. Okay, I spend less money on the private school for education. If I have a daughter like you, then I'm just to send her straight up to the art school. It's all choices. But my biggest question is, I think mostly educational part that we, as a parents, we all expect it from the school. But when child having a little problem, I think it's not because of education stuff. It's more like a social aspect of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Huge.
So,
Socially,
but then if child doesn't really open up and share, what is really the call that you kind of have to move the child away? Let's say, they didn't have any happen for bullying, but some kids really having hard time adjusting.
Yeah.
And then meeting friends and then, like try to initiate. Some kids are really shy, but then I don't know what's the right, actions that maybe until he or she is ready to be out there, socialize with a big group, then I pull him to, school homeschooling. What is really then the parents should know.
I know in some private
that's
schools they pair up the kids.
Right.
And I think that's really important because it makes them feel comfortable, like they know somebody. And
So that's more of a social issue, socialization. Because right now I'm homeschooling my son, and the difference that I can say from having been in private, public, to homeschool is the school basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really where kids go to socialize and then learn. Because he's home and he's learning immensely, like more than I can even keep up with. And he's so, confident, and he's got it. He's figured it out and he's excelling. But he's alone, so then we have to figure out the socialization part of it. So that for me is what's the difference between the homeschool part and a classroom setting. Because if I put him back in a school, all he's really going for is to socialize because he's not missing in the academics.
Right.
So that's really tricky. We look at the school for the academics, but really 90% of the time, these kids are socializing. They're socializing.
Yeah.
And that's important.
But and it is.
have to
I think
learn
it's
to do it,
50-50. I don't think one is more important than the other. I think they go hand in hand. Like what you were saying about the like learning, I don't know if I necessarily agree with like learning. I get what you're saying, but I think it's really important. If you think of like writing, if you're writing a composition together, let's say you as a class, you're teaching your class how to write a persuasive speech. You want the artsy kids there. because they're the creative writers. And then you want the other kids that are
formatted
more,
properly.
that they're really good
The
at
logistics.
writing the content,
Yeah.
and they've got the mechanics and the grammar. And when you have them, what I have my students do, I love that. I love that my kids all learn differently, because then they work off each other. And you want a balanced child. You don't want just a child that's, a ballerina for the, yes, that could be their profession and that's their gifting and they use it. But you want them to be able to go to Target and know how much their groceries are going to cost. Still, you want them to be a balanced learner and a balanced adult. And so when I teach, even with it, whether it's math, composition, I have them working in groups, and I put the different learners together so they can learn from each other. Because I am not a creative person. You can tell me write a paper, and I'll have the mechanics correct. The content will be there of what you're asking me, but it might not be the best paper because it'll be dry. Exactly. And I'll probably get an A, but it's a boring paper. I understand the mechanical part. So I need that artsy person to come alongside
me. Do you think that
me.
the public school teachers, they don't necessarily have the time or the effort to be able to do that when you're sitting there grouping? I don't think they have the time to do that. Or some teachers don't care.
I think
in the public school system there are probably more
they're
teachers that
babysitting more
don't
than they're
care.
teaching.
And also, a lot of
think
public
so.
schools hire in substitutes.
Yeah.
Substitutes. Thank you. She
I like teaching you English right here.
right.
Pepperdine represent Pepperdine.
Right. So they hire in, so they're not full-time students, so they don't have the same passion behind education that we got back in the day.
Okay, so this goes to an article, sorry to interrupt, that I read about expectations and teachers expectations on students, which I thought was just appalling. That most teachers, when in public schools, when they have Hispanics and African American students, have they go in with low expectations on these students. So the students do not try. Because the teacher, student, so it'll be like, oh, this is good enough, when it's not good enough.
That's all you got.
Yes.
You don't ever have to go up here.
Exactly. And that, I think, is horrifying.
That's horrifying.
That's horrifying. I mean, I know that's not the case with you because you've always.
Because I was the ethnic kid that they thought less of. So I know when I see
Right. So how do you
kids,
combat that as a parent that can't afford a private education, that doesn't have the time to homeschool? How do you combat that? What are you supposed to do? You have a situation where this is your public school. You can't change. You can't do anything. This is what do you do? What do you do with that?
Thank you for joining us at Table for Five. Please like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. We hope you were informed, educated, and entertained. See you next time.